Alright, let's take a look at my dev container and how we can improve it a little bit. People have started to open up their eyes a little bit to it, and I figured it was as good a time as any for me to fix some of the stuff in it that I wish I had thought of a little bit sooner. So I created just a new empty repository, and we're mostly going to be copying stuff from my main or from my original repository, but I just figured I will make a couple adjustments here and there to improve it a little bit. So we're just gonna do container. Alright. Since we're not in the dev container now, I might actually have to install some stuff. That's not what I want. Branch. So yeah, let's see here. Branch. There we go. So let's start with readme. I want this to be easy to get installed or like copied over. It's one of the things I want to fix. Currently, I'm thinking easiest way to do that is to just git clone it. People could even get submodule added actually, but that does mean we shouldn't have a readme file, right? Am I thinking? No, it's fine that we have a readme file. What we're gonna do is we're gonna do dev container.json. We're gonna do docker file. And just to be clear, I'm not gonna remove the old one. The old one will remain indefinitely. I might just start working here. I might link the other one to this one or something. I don't know. We'll see. But I'm kind of leaning towards the approach of git submodule adding the dev container. I'll show you what that'll look like in a few moments. But let's get ourselves started with just copying over these contents. And don't worry, we're gonna be going over everything from the beginning. This is just so I have something to start with. So, extensions. This should be in customizations. That's why it's complaining. That's something I learned later on, because I've actually already made some improvements to this, but I didn't upload those improvements to the main repository. It's annoying to run that all the time. We don't need port forwards. The remote user should always be VS Code, because that's what we're going to add to the container. We're actually gonna remove this because I once had issues where it couldn't be retrieved, and it actually starts faster if you just bake it into the actual container. So we don't need any features. I have a huge list of extensions that I could add to this, kind of like recommendations, but I want to keep it minimal for people so they're not overwhelmed. But Rust Analyzer, unfortunately you need that. The Tauri extension, really useful to have. And yeah, this is literally just helps you develop the Docker file. And if you're gonna use a dev container, you might as well have it. these are a bunch of arguments, and we're gonna be updating that later a little bit. But for now, I'm not actually sure if this is true anymore, so we might just comment this out to see if we run into issues, and then I'll add it back again. Enables virtualization inside the container. So this is related to getting the Android emulator to function properly. And we're just gonna add this here. Privileged. We're gonna comment that out, and we're gonna say that this is required if you need to. It's a bit more just generalized, so it's anywhere. Great. The README is gonna have the container for now. And let's go over this from the top and see where we can make improvements and alterations. I'm actually going to look at another project of mine. Yeah, the screen, I don't remember anything secret in it. So this is one of the first improvements we're gonna be adding. It's another argument. That argument is for which node version we're gonna use. And we're gonna use this little snippet from my other project. And we're gonna add that to we don't need it in the base image. I'm gonna add it further down, and I'll explain the magic of doing that later. So now we have something that we can work on. And so the first thing is which Android SDK tools version it is that we're fetching. This is used later when we are actually straight up directly from Google downloading the command line tools. And I don't much feel like explaining the exact process in how to retrieve this exact number, partially because this is the latest one currently, and later on we're gonna be replacing it anyway using the SDK manager. So regardless of which old version you're getting, it's gonna be new enough where this will update it to the latest. So you should be able to keep this at just as it is. And yeah, platform version, I've set it to 32, and I think actually Android, like the Android project that Tauri makes, will actually override this sort of. It'll download 33, I think. So setting up 32 is a little bit redundant, I believe. I think you need the build tools and the NDK version, however. So those two at least are valid. I think that one might be able to be dropped. There's an argument for which node version, which I explained before. We're adding Node.js later on manually, instead of using the feature, because the feature is slower and it can mess up. These are arguments related to creating the the non-root sudo user. You don't need to understand these. Just know that if you change the username in dev container, I do think that VS Code actually forwards that to this argument automatically. You don't need to know what these are. Just accept that these are good. Then we have dependencies, and these are technically just Tauri dependencies. This is one of the improvements I wanted to make, just to make this clearer that this is specifically Tauri dependencies. So if we look for dependencies, we can find that they're used here and here. So basically, we want this to be very clear that these are all the dependencies for Tauri. If you decide to use version 1 of Tauri and you want to use dev container, all you need to do is update these dependencies to what's for version 1. I might release this in 2 different branches, probably will actually, it's a really good idea to do. And if I release it in 2 different branches, I can have a version 1 branch and a version 2 branch that will have these dependencies primarily updated to whatever is relevant. The image we're basing our container on is the base dev container version, and this is the tag we use Ubuntu 22.04. If you want another version, you can pass that as an argument or just change it in here. Then we're building the base image for the Docker file, which pulls this image and starts the build. Here we have to redefine arguments, and this is, in my opinion, really dumb. I'm sure there's some very good explanation for it, super technical, but basically all of these arguments are consumed when you reach from. So when these arguments reach from, they're now gone. I can't just keep using them. So what you have to do is you have to redefine them in every new layer, or in every new stage you make, every new image or sub-image. I don't remember what they call it exactly, but every new mini container or multi-step build is what it's called. You have to redefine the arguments that you're going to use in that context, otherwise they won't be defined. We're setting Debian frontend to be non-interactive. We're updating our list of available packages. We are upgrading the container. We're installing a bunch of general dependencies. This isn't that clearly defined. Why don't I just put them up here? It's a perfectly valid question to ask, and the main reason why I added it like this is because these are just kind of basic things you should have, I feel. But I noticed, like, I have git twice because I set this up in multiple settings. But like, let's look at it. So we're installing, yes, quiet, no recommended packages, sudo, so that we can actually run the sudo command to become a super user. We're installing the default JDK because we're gonna be doing Android stuff. It needs a JDK. wget and curl, because they're the basic tools that a lot of stuff expects you to have. Exed utils, I don't remember what it's for, but I believe something required. That's all I'm gonna say about that. Zip and unzip, basic tools. I believe I use them primarily, primarily unzip here. File, I was surprised was actually required by, I believe it was actually Tauri that needed file when I added it. So I'm not sure if we should actually add that, or it might have just gone under the radar, because I think that file is most of the time installed on everyone's systems, so it might just be an oversight. SoCat is a port forwarder, basically. CLang or Clang, or however you want to pronounce it, is a linker to the compiler. I want to say linker for the C language, and we're going to be using that later for mold, and it is required as a dependency on the system because mold uses it. libssl dev, just always going to need that. And yes, we do have it defined twice, but this one is definitely non-optional. There's a lot of stuff that wants it. Package config, our least wanted, or our least liked but most required package of all kinds of package finders, unfortunately. You need it installed. Then you have git and git lfs, large file storage. No explanations needed there. And we're adding bash completion because it's a really good tool when you're working in the terminal. LLVM for further optimizations, and then we're finally installing Tauri dependencies and extra dependencies. Tauri dependencies, as I said, is going to be just straight up the stuff from the website that we say Tauri needs. Extra dependencies are going to be anything additional that the user needs and they don't want to have to edit the Docker file for it. Because when you edit the dev container JSON instead, it's easier for each developer to customize it, I feel, when you edit it in dev container JSON, and in the Docker file you keep a less often updated version, because updating the Docker file, if you push that to all your developers, it'll update all of their setups. Dev container JSON you could edit yourself, and the impact won't be as large on other developers. But that's it for the base image. Then we move on to the Android SDK, and it gets its own image. We're setting the working directory. I don't think we actually have a good reason for setting the working directory at all. Alright, it's just to make sure that this folder exists, really. So workdir will not just set the working directory for all subsequent commands, it'll actually create the directory as well. So this is an easy way to get that directory created. We're gonna shorten this down to just redefine arguments, because I've already explained why we have to do that, and it's just too long as a comment. So here's a bunch of environment variables, and these are basically the basic Android environment variables you need. So we need Android home. Android SDK root, I think, is deprecated, but something needed it at some point. I have enough experience with Android development where basically just keep adding these variables. If you find a random deprecated environment variable for Android, just add it. You may very well encounter something that just randomly will stop working because you didn't add some deprecated environment variable. So these two point to where the SDK is located, which is going to be /Android SDK. The NDK home will be in the SDK under the NDK folder and in the NDK version. Then we add to our path the command line tools latest bin. And Java home, we're setting to this because that is going to be where the default JDK got installed. Then we set up the SDK. We run curl to download into Android SDK tools zip from this URL, and you can be certain that it's safe because it is dl.google.com So this is a download from Google, and technically we should probably do some verification of this, but I don't feel like doing that. Might be an improvement later. It's a slight security bump. In my opinion, not a huge deal, but if you ask some more paranoid people, it is a huge deal, but never ran into issues with it. So I'm just gonna keep it like this for now. We'll do some checking later if I feel like it. Then we make the command line tools directory with -b, so it creates this entire path. Then we unzip the zip file into the latest directory we created. Then we move the command line tools from this folder to the latest folder. This is because the zip file is structured weird and commands will start to fail if these things are not put in the proper places. So if we try to run it from this weird subdirectory, it can actually not find the SDK, because I am 90% sure that it just like goes up to directories to find it. It's dumb. It has environment variables to look for, like just to look for. But no, the command line tools seem to want to go up 2 levels. And that's why we have to place it specifically in this location. And then we remove the zip file. Then we accept all licenses. Then we create the repository's CFG file. Now, I will admit that I'm not 100% sure what this fixes. This part specifically, I don't remember if I just straight up found somewhere else, or while looking for how to set up in Bash the SDK automatically, or if I just fixed it myself. It's from somewhere probably, and it fixes something. And then we fetch the command line tools, platform tools, emulator. This is where I'm uncertain if we can maybe skip this. I do want to break this out into 2 lines, just to keep in line with how all the other lines are. So we install 1 thing per line. So command line tools, platform tools, emulator, install the SDK, the build tools, the NDK, and then the system image. This is what you'll be using for the emulator. Then we just free of charge create 2 we create Gradle properties that we copy later, which will help slightly with the Android performance. And that's it for the setting up the SDK. In the next part, we set up mold. So from base image as mold, so we keep using the base image where we've installed all the dependencies that are globally required. These are just dependencies that over here we have a very important update. If you don't run apt update before the apt install in a Docker file, there is a potential cache related issue where the apt install will fail. So you should always, best practices, use apt update before any apt install you make, or like in the same run command. So I don't have to run apt update before every install, but I have to run it at the start of every run that uses apt install. So here we install dependencies that aren't included in the base image, that only mold requires when building. Then we clone mold and move into it. We check out version 1.4.2, Maybe we should make an argument for that. I think we will. Mold version. And what did we say that this was? This was 1 for 2. Mold version. Because we're using it, we have to redefine it. Arguments. So now users can actually specify a different mold version to use. I've actually gone away from writing new lines like that. I write them like this nowadays because it actually makes the Docker file more readable. Because then you know when a new command starts and not. So now I know that each of these lines is a new command running, versus if I'm up here and I have a slash at the end. Now I know that this isn't a new command, this is a continuation of the previous command. So it makes it way more readable when you have the ampersands at the start. But yeah, then we just check out the mold version, we make it, and we install it. And then we create a config YAML file that we can use later on, copy it into the end user's home directory in order to enable mold for all projects they make that targets x86_64-unknown-linux-gnu or GNU. So basically, when you run cargo tower redev, mold will be used. When you use cargo tower rig android dev, it does not get used. Then we make our own version of the Tauri CLI. The reason we do this and in this way is because issues with the Tauri CLI. When I used it from PNPM, the solution for me was to cargo install a newer version, I believe worked, but I required specifically the next branch, and I just decided to use this solution for that. So what we're doing is we're setting up Rust up. We're adding Rust up, or the cargo command to our path, and then we're this is a dash version of running source. So here we're loading the cargo environment variables. Then we're cloning Tauri. We're moving into the tooling CLI. We're checking out the next branch, which is Tauri CLI version now, because we're gonna make that an argument. Redefine argument. Now you don't have to put them in this version, in this way that I've made it, like making them at the top, but it does make it way clearer if you're ever gonna revisit the Docker file to find what commands are available or arguments are available. I could technically just set it at the bottom, but this is just best practices. Alright, argument for the branch to use for the CLI. Now to jump down quickly, check it out. So yeah, we're checking out that branch, by default the next branch, then we're building it. I'm not release building it, And this is really weird. I tried release build, did not work. I have no idea what shenanigans is going on with that, but the debug for some reason worked better for me. So we're gonna be using the debug version of the CLI. You won't notice any substantial difference from just the CLI, because the CLI isn't actually in charge of things like building. It will be a bit bigger and stuff technically, but it's such a small difference. We're just gonna go with the debug CLI. Now we're working on the finalized container, so now it's time to put everything together. So now we're just doing from the base image, not as anything, because this is the last image in the Docker file. We're getting our arguments again. I'm gonna change this to redefine args. And we don't need to set the working directory. I don't think we should even. There's a space in between here just to really signify that these are not related. I don't like how it looks, but I'm gonna go with it because it's more useful. Then we have the same environment argument or environment variables as before when we set up the SDK. Then we add the non-root user to the sudo users. This will ensure that when you're in the dev container, you can actually run sudo apt install and add stuff yourself. You shouldn't have to. If you have to apt install something, you should add it to the Docker file, probably. But there are situations where, like, I've had so many issues with Git committing, and the solution to that has been to run Git as sudo. Like, just I can't even explain the issue because I don't know what the issue is. Sometimes I need to run sudo. It's something related to how I've forwarded GPG, I believe, from my host system into the dev container. So I need to fix that at some point. Here we're installing Node.js, and we're using Node source in order to do it, their setup version. So here, if we have version 18, for example, it would be 18.x, the latest version 18 version. We execute that, and then we can update and just install Node.js. If we don't use their repository for this, which is what we're doing when we're doing that, is Node.js would be version 12, because that's the latest one that's available in the regular Ubuntu directories. Then we have npm. We're updating the npm version, and then we're installing pnpm and yarn. Personally, I could go without npm or yarn, really, but we're not getting away from npm, so we might as well keep it at the latest version. We want pnpm, and yarn might as well just come in here, because what if a developer decides to use it, or what if you just have two different projects, one that uses yarn? If I decide to use a dev container for the Tauri Discord bot, we are actually forced to use yarn because of the CI CD issues, where the place that builds the Tauri Discord bot doesn't actually support PNPM. It's really weird. And we didn't want to go through the hassle of supporting PNPM, because that involves a custom Docker file, adds maintenance to that. It's just not worth it. So we went with just using yarn for the Discord bot. So it's useful to have all three of them, just in case you need it. And yeah, then we're running, this part fixes an issue when you're running PNPM setup. I don't know exactly why this would be an issue and why it can't find that, but there you go. I think it's because dash isn't supported, so you have to tell it to use bash instead manually. Then we're doing a bit of cleaning, and there's a little bit more cleaning you can do, but we're not doing it because I ran into issues doing too much cleaning, and this is enough. User username. This is a user and then VS Code, and this ensures that the remaining commands get you ran as the non-root user, because a fair, like the rest of this, we actively don't want to run as the root user. For example, installing Rust, if we run that as the root user, cargo gets installed in the wrong directory. We want this in the user's home directory, so we have to install it after we've switched user. Then we ensure that if we get like, this shouldn't be necessary, but might as well add it. It just ensures that when we're launching the terminal, we actually do get cargo added. Then we add cargo to the path, and this is primarily because we want to use Rust up here, and if we don't add that to the path before this command, it can't actually find Rust up. First, we're just basic updating Rust up. We've already installed the default toolchain, and this shouldn't be necessary, but we do it anyway. And then we add a bunch of targets here. These are the Android targets, and we're actually gonna do this to make it a bit clearer. And then we're gonna do Rust up target add wasm32 unknown. So if you're using any of the Rust-based front-end frameworks, like Sycamore, for example, which I can strongly recommend, you're gonna need this target, and it's better that you add it at this point. And is there else? There's one. Just so, speaking of the Rust front-end frameworks, we're gonna need to install Trunk, but we're gonna need to install a custom version that Amr Bashir from the Tauri working group has made. So we're gonna use cargo install git github.com. We actually need HTTPS Amr Bashir /trunk. And you have to specify that it is Trunk that you're installing. So this will install a slightly modified version of Trunk that primarily adds an option or two that we wanted / needed in order to get hot reloading to work. And I believe this is sufficient. I don't think we need to do the same thing we did for the Tower CLI here. I believe this should just work. Anyway, then we start to copy over files, and I've been annoyed at before that I haven't done this. And that's just because mold finishes fairly quickly. Towery finishes fairly quickly. We want these to be capable of executing before the Android SDK is run, before the Android SDK finishes. So here we're copying from the mold image. We're changing the owner of all the files to the current user, and what we're copying over is the mold binary. And from mold as well, we're copying over the config toml into the user's home directory in order to enable mold across all projects. And from the Tauri CLI, we're installing cargo Tauri into user local bin cargo Tauri. So this is what you would run cargo Tauri dev later on. And no, you don't have to run it with the dash. So the restructuring I did here was just, we're now running these, like the container will continue a bit quicker to these steps. Then we have copying from Android SDK. The Android SDK is by far the slowest step of them all, so we want to do that last. And we can create the emulator technically inside the SDK container and copy it over. I just didn't feel like sitting and figuring out where it's installed and if there's any dependencies it needs. So I figured after the copy, we just create it, because this is actually a relatively fast step. And yeah, this is the entirety of the Docker file for the dev container. I'm just gonna check my other project quickly and see if there are any other improvements I added to that we don't have here. So I think we have the most recently awesome version that I have. Some other dependencies that you definitely shouldn't require. Yeah, here I am installing trunk in the way I am here. You need that either. You're only gonna do that if. So yeah, you can have everything you need. If you need more stuff, you can of course just customize this to your heart's content. Now we're gonna look here. We're gonna take all of these arguments and we're just gonna push them in here, and then we're gonna comment them. And this is just to make them easy to find and alter. And we can remove all of these, because beyond that it should be like we're gonna switch the and can't be bothered. I need to just and these like that. That should be all of the possible arguments you can add to the Docker file. So now users have all the arguments and all their explanations readily available in the dev container JSON file. This is required if you run an Electron app. This should be required based on my testing, but I'm gonna not use it for now just because I can. And then we have the device. So let's start by git git initial commit git config global user email simon@gmail.com name C. There we go. Although that went too quickly, because there should be a password, because I didn't sign this now. Commit, amend, no edit, S. Failed to sign. As I said before, there is something really weird going on with my I'm just gonna commit this unverified. You've seen me do it live, so you know it's verified. But yeah, for now we're just gonna commit it As is. Easiest way to fix that is to just go here. Said before and I'll say it again. There really is something wrong with my environment right now. I don't know what it is. I have not set up my credentials for pushing. I'm running on a different profile right now than I normally am. I'm just gonna move this over to where you guys can't see it. And I'm just gonna set up a new key, I think. It's gonna be better all around anyway, seeing as if anything on the stream leaks, there's secret stuff, and at least I can just revoke this key. Now we're just gonna go to there's SSH and GPG keys, new SSH key. Gonna go to generating a new key. Copy that command. World's most secret stuff. Should be the spring tool. Should just be a authentication key. Can you authenticate and sign with the same key? Now we have two-step verification. That should be it. There we go. All right. So, there we go. We have a new repository for the dev container. Wait, improperly formatted. That's really weird. There are no changes to show. Oh wait. I actually created the readme file as just readme without nd. There we go. I don't think there's anything else I can really do. So let's see. There we go. Now the question is, what do we we set up a new project. So the idea I have currently is essentially cd projects, and then we need Tauri app. We need that command with --alpha because we're cool people. Tauri app. Wait, didn't I have one called Tauri app? Yeah, I did. Sample app. We don't care about any of this right now. So now we go to sample app and we open it. And so the way I envision you currently adding this, you copy that URL, and then I think we can actually git submodule add that to dev container, git init. So now, as you can see, we were giving git modules to the dev container, and just because I'm cool and I like it, do that. And that has added the dev container in its entirety, and I should be able to just build this now. Of course, I can talk about this. Nice. So my submodule version works. Good news. And we can open this, and this will take a long time, by the way. I think it takes anywhere between 10 and 20 minutes on my system. Not that my system is slow by any means, by the way. It's just, it's a lot to build. It takes a while. And I've even optimized it with multi-stage builds and stuff, so to add a level of parallelism to it. So just be patient. It really doesn't get much faster than this in terms of how a Docker file can be developed. What you can do, however, is set up pre-built containers. And that's an entirely different story. I said before that I wanted to support using both version 1 and version 2. So if you go to the dev container and just run status here, we are now on the main branch. But what if we just git branch, git checkout B, I mean. B, how do you specify it later on? Would be at B2, or would it be at 2? I prefer writing at 2. It would be 2. The question also is, no, that's fine, but the different brand. So we're gonna do that. So now we have the V2 branch, and now we can start working on adapting this as well for version 1. for now, no, actually, I believe that's the sample app that we're waiting for, so we can actually open this. So if we run git status, we're on version 2 now. So this is all version 2. That's good. Git check out BV1. Git base make. Then we want to check with Tauri. This is for version 1, so we check the dependencies. These should be all dependencies. So we should be pretty much good to go if we just do a bit of cleanup to this. So these should be all the version 1 dependencies, and looking through the list, version 2 is what adds mobile support. So we don't need the SDK at all in version 1, which means we don't need the virtualization. We can remove the SDK related arguments. We can remove So this is why we need to make a sample project, because now Node.js didn't get its own correct. Why is that? Well, it's most likely because, yes, we forgot to read. As I said before, this is really dumb, but you really do need to do this, otherwise it just doesn't work. And before we commit that to the other repository, we're just gonna verify that it actually fixes all the issues, so we don't have to make multiple commits for something this stupid. And I'm just gonna have to remember to update version 2 as well. And yeah, the SDK stuff are no longer required in version 1. We don't need that. Is there anything else? We can remove all the Android targets. I'm gonna add that comment as well to the other one. And of course, we can remove the entirety of the Android SDK. We still have the base image and the arguments. So this should be it for adapted for version 1 of Tauri. There we go. So now we have version 1 and version 2. Git check out version 2. Awesome. Node source. And then we have source. Awesome comment. That's fine, doesn't matter that it's whether it's exactly the same comment, even though it's gonna haunt my dreams if it isn't. Good commit. Fixed bug. Now that should be able to check here and branches. So switch to another branch. That's what I want to do. Version 2 is going to be default. I understand the consequences. We can even delete the main branch so we don't need it. So git branch git pull might be a good idea. Check out git branch remake. Oh right. Remove branch from remote. Yeah, I deleted it locally. Git origin d. Oh right. Git branch origin d main. Wait, wasn't that it? Git push origin d main. Yeah, there we go. And now if we update this, we're gonna see that we only have version 2 and version 1. It is sad for our sample app because it is currently building with the main version, but that's fine because this is going to be massively cached in your system and it's going to rebuild very fast. The only way again to make this faster is by using a pre-built image. But just keep in mind, these images are actually fairly large, at least the one that used the version 2 one is a fair bit larger, by I think a couple gigabytes. So if you decide to use that rebuild, you're basically swapping out your slow build time for slow download time instead. So there's a bit of give and take with that, you know, depending on your networking situation and where you're storing it and things like that. And I'm leaning towards not offering a pre-built version. I don't feel like there's much need for it. If there is an update, it's faster for you to just rebuild it locally, because when you're rebuilding it locally, it uses all these caching steps in order to really speed up the rebuilding process. When you're pulling from remote, I do think that each update is going to be a full new pull. Not 100% sure of that, but I know that according to my testing, the difference wasn't big enough, so I prefer just building it myself. So if I was to add this to yet another project just because I can, because we're gonna be waiting for a little while for the other one to finish, just do this. And this time we don't use alpha, because I want to try one. One. Here we have a version 1 project for Tauri. Now we run git submodule add https github.com/cml/devcontainer to dev container, and we have to initialize this as a repository. And if we just verify that, yeah, this is version 2, because if we go into dev container, git status version 2. The best thing about adding it as a submodule this way is that it's very easy for you to get updates from me, because then you just go into the directory and run git pull, and that's it. If I make more updates, that's all you have to do. And I don't think I can offer any better support than that, honestly, for getting quick updates to you regarding the state of this project. If you would prefer not using a submodule, you can use other methods. You can, for example, just git clone the project, copy the folder, and you're done. It's up to you. Just to show it off. Actually, you have to. I'll do it anyway. Git clone https github.com/cml/devcontainer, and just gonna put it in dev container without the dot at the start. So if we had .dev container, that would have been the same, and then we just remove from dev container git. See, just RF. There we go. So now dev container is no longer its own git repository, and you have effectively copied the dev container, complete with a readme file where I'll put all the options and explanations in a while. So we can just go ahead and delete that, and this should be a fully functional version 1 container. Progress sample app. So as you can see, it's working on the Android SDK right now, so that's gonna take a while. Can start working on this one as well, I guess. Shouldn't be any. I don't think there will be any clashes or issues with it. Shouldn't be, I think. Wait, no. I forgot. Abort. I forgot that I had to check out version 1 first, so. So now I'm just reopening the project, but without container. And this can take a few seconds. It's primarily related to the fact that we're using VSL for the actual Docker build in the other window. And this is pretty resource intense while it's building. Come on. Oh, nice. That's already finished. I'm a little bit surprised. VSL is really lagging for me right now. I can't even open it. It's not a good sign. Put it that way. At least the dev container is running fine. Just run cargo tower dev now. should be greeted with a fully functional app. If I'm not stupid and forget to run pnpmi. See, this is why I had it in the dev container JSON file. It's annoying, like, all other times, like after the first time, but now it's the first time, so now I'm annoyed. Like next time it'll be much better, but yeah. Almost forgot my pet. Not much further now. And there we go. Nice. So now we've confirmed that the new setup works. That's nice. We can also, while we're here, test out the AVT, which we can find. So now we can get status. I just need to run that. No immediate fail means that it's a very good sign and it should be working. So we'll see. And it popped up. Again, this is gonna be pretty slow. When the animation finishes is roughly when I hit the command. As I said before, it's not technically related to that you have to wait that long, it's just it feels like it's better for some reason. That's gonna take a little while. I'm gonna check in on version 1. So version 1 is taking its sweet time. No, that's the sample app again. Alright, I closed to version 1, right. Because it didn't wanna, PSL didn't wanna cooperate, that's what it was. It still doesn't. Not gonna lie, it's a little bit disconcerting. I might have to restart VSL, but I don't want to restart it while we're testing stuff. So we'll wait. It's the safer bet. Now, if it doesn't work now, it could be because of that networking thing that I said I believe we don't need. Because I think the network thing in dev container JSON is related to when I was running ADB on the host. but now we're actually running everything inside the container, so I don't think there would be any such network issue. But we'll see. As you can see, the emulator is just really slow. That's all this is. It doesn't help, of course, that ESL right now is being really slow and annoying for me. We're building something pretty heavy, so a lot of resources right now being used for ESL. Instead of wasting our time, we can actually start working a bit on documentation. And so what we want to do here is, first off, we want to have a getting started. Add this repository. We're gonna have two alternatives. Get someone will add https github.com/container and into the container. Alternative 2 is going to be git clone HTTP. I'm just gonna git clone rmrf container /git. This approach offers easy updates from upstream, since you can just pull the latest version from Git. And nice, the emulator is working, and as long as this tells me that I am greeted by Rust, which it did, everything is working. It's not pretty, but it's working. Now we can shut that down, so we've verified that version 2 works. Awesome. And we can actually save that, and we're just gonna restart quickly, as in the VSL installation. Like, we're gonna restart VSL. Hopefully it won't take too long to do. Sometimes this can actually be a little bit stuck. Not sure why. See, it's restarting Docker as well, just in case it's Docker preventing it from shutting down. My Docker desktop is also having issues. Stop. offices and oh, I believe that's the one. Start. Yeah. So if this happens, you can just well, okay. If it happens, just LXSS manager. That's the one that you want to just restart if BSL ever gets stuck. And I'm restarting Docker as well. Now we can run projects version 1. And we've already verified that version 2 works. So now I just want to verify that version 1 also works. And if we go to the dev container, we can get status, get checkout v1. And if we just verify in here that, yep, it doesn't have the Android SDK or anything, so that has worked beautifully. Rebuild and reopen the container. This should actually be pretty fast, I believe, since most of these layers should be very similar. Oh no, actually it shouldn't, because we're gonna be modifying the base image. Damn it, this is gonna be a complete rebuild. But at least it's not gonna have the Android SDK. So since it doesn't have the Android SDK, the by far biggest dependency is gone, so we're not gonna be stuck here all night, fortunately. So we can reopen the dev here as well. So just structure these. Just gonna do this. I want to see the build process below. It's fine. This approach, you clone the object and then remove the get folder in order to effectively copy the folder from this has the benefit of you not having to learn how submodules work, and you won't have another dependency in your project, but it doesn't offer easy updates. In order to update the module, you can simply do the following. CD dev container, get checkout. Oh wait, do you need to check out? Yes, you do need to check out. Get checkout v1. Oh, 2. Get full. Are into a specific unit, which is why you're going to have to check out the aren't always the easiest to work with, but once you get the hang of them, the issues, in my opinion, are worth the extra effort. No, not the... Once you get the hang of them, the issues in me are worth the not the extra effort, worth the added benefits. This is a command that you want to copy a lot, namely this one. So we're just gonna do that there. So we don't actually need this text. This is something I think I'll make a GitHub issue for instead, so that it doesn't get lost. This the information is good. I'm not sure yet how I want that added, so we'll keep that as it is. Setting up a dev container, set up dev container development. Well, you're already setting up a dev container, so I don't think I need to mention that. I don't need to mention that you can copy it. I don't need to say that you can trust me and use the image. You can look that up yourself. This is just basic dev container usage. Alright, I can't see that one anymore. Let's keep going. And we open the preview. So now you have an easy to copy command for that, but it doesn't make sense to add there. But then again, I so often on the emulator. I think that'll be fine. Let's say submodule. Data submodule. Container. Remove git repository. Commands. Android emulator. This is also good information, but I think I'll fix it before I add more instructions in the README maybe. I might actually want to split up the README into multiple files honestly, but we'll keep it like this for now. I'll try to get some help from someone like Lorenzo or something, or someone, not something, someone, to make this a lot nicer, because I'm not very good at structuring these things. I'm good at rambling on and on and on, but I'm not that good at actually writing instructions. This part, by the way, was before I discovered how to get the VSLG properly function, which honestly was way easier than I anticipated. I was kind of shocked that it was working that fast and easy. Because it just works automatically. I didn't need to set this up. Use VSL2 on Windows. We can add a performance section. Windows. Use VSL. If you don't use VSL, you will have a massive performance drop related to I/O disk I/O, which caused by differing file systems. Make sure your project resides in e.g. project/my app. So that one is very important, and the sufficient RAM. Yeah, this is a Windows thing, I think. No, this is more of a general thing, I think. So we'll allocate sufficient RAM. Third. VS Code has a nasty tendency of crashing unless you add enough RAM. Unless you provide Docker to run for VSL. Oh wait, this is a VSL config, isn't it? Yeah, so this isn't general. This is a VSL thing. Allocate sufficient RAM. 16 GB. If you don't have enough RAM accessible to VSL, VS Code has a nasty habit of crashing. I'm not sure if exactly where the line is drawn, but I'm using 16 gigabytes. I've added this will speed up desktop builds, not Android builds. It's something to be aware of because while it addressed enhance the speed of which your project is built, it's not necessarily suitable for production builds you have been working. And figure conversion. Yeah, I need to make a sure of that. And that one I have to fix as well, but not tonight. Yeah. Oh, nice. It's running. So since this is version 1, we're only going to be able to run Tauri Dev. Won't be able to see the Android emulator or anything, because version 1 doesn't have. Of my existence, God. Rust analyzer. As you can see, it's moving really fast. Almost done. We've nearly verified that we have a dev container now, both for version 1 and version 2. Version 1 is up, and there we see some results. Awesome. So now we have a dev container both for version 1 and for version 2. So don't need that anymore. And now we can just focus on this a little bit, just read it through once. On the emulator, full disclosure, I'm not sure if all of these options are necessary. This was copy-paste from somewhere else with slight modification. I, for example, added no snapshot load because it feels more stable that way. Yeah, adding it as a submodule and how you would update the submodule, or at least one approach to it. We have the clone version, we have the command, we have some tips on performance. So, is there anything we're missing? We don't need the we have covered this, that will make an issue. This I will fix. Port forwarding. Port forwarding and stuff like that is going to be probably in another stream because I want to experiment a little bit with it first, probably just to verify some stuff in a way that I don't want to do on stream. Git status, we're on version 2, git add, git status, git commit, updated readme.fd, git push. And then we can, there's the git version of doing this, of like stealing this file essentially from git log. I mean, git checkout v1, git share. Okay. There we go. This is why you learn how to use Git. So now we updated both branches readmes with minimal effort. And we can actually just v2 or v1 here, just because why not? Now we have version 1, And we have version 2, complete with the proper command. Awesome. Now, just because I'm actually one that wrote one of the most popular Stack Overflow questions on the topic. Here's how you center text in a markdown file. So of course I have to add that. Just check out the one. It gives keeps things a teeny bit nicer. All of these are unverified because I didn't add this. I'll fix the verification thing later. It's not that big a deal. But yeah, I think this looks a lot nicer now. More shorter, more concise, more to the point. I'm pretty happy with where this has gone. This now in a state where I'm gonna stop copying the folders like you've seen in the other streams, like copying them manually from Git. I'm gonna add them as sub-modules from now on, I think. Because it's just gonna be easier. Then I also know that all of them have the same Docker file, which means that I don't have to worry about having updated any of them when it comes to caching, because this will massively speed up rebuild times. So yeah, that's pretty much all I had for this stream. We've covered everything that goes into the dev container, really. Verified that they work, you've gone over the setup with Git, how you do them as submodules, and just, yeah, that should be everything. So, I'll see you guys next time. Bye!